welcome to Manage Self, Lead Others. My name is Nina Sunday, and today I feel very privileged to be speaking with two senior leaders from a company I have worked with in the past at their offsites, Kronos, which merged recently with UKG to form an ultimate UKG organisation. We're going to talk about that. I'd like to welcome Neil Solomon and Charlie Dewitt.
Yep.
And I'll just explain that Neil Solomon is Vice President of Asia Pacific and Latin America for UKG. He developed, executed and led both US and international organisations to drive growth in the company. You've been with the organisation about 20 years, correct? And 6 years focusing on growing markets in Asia Pacific and Latin America. And Charlie Dewitt, you are Managing Director of UKG, Australia, New Zealand and Southeast Asia. And when you were Vice President of Business Development, you drove strategy. The goal is to grow as a $1 billion global enterprise software leader. So I just want to say that top of my list has been to interview the senior leaders of Kronos, now UKG, because whenever I have had any dealings working with the teams, I've been absolutely amazed at not only the culture and the respect that everybody has for their leaders and the engagement, but also they frequently quote that it's on the list as a best place to work. So welcome very much to Neil and Charlie.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina.
Now, recently there was a merger, so perhaps we should open by a little bit of a discussion around how, what that was about. And I believe the new tagline is "Our purpose is people." So, Neil, do you want to sort of talk to that?
Yes, certainly, Nina. Thank you. So yes, we're almost 1 year into the merger between Ultimate Software and Kronos Incorporated. So we took two companies that were roughly equal in size in terms of revenue, roughly in round numbers, about $1.3 to $1.5 billion each in turnover, roughly the same amount of employees, roughly 6 to 6.5 thousand. And we merged these two companies to have this wonderful HCM platform that we can take to the markets where we are. Of course, none of us predicted that we'd be trying to do this highly complex, very large merger in COVID times, which is really, if only we were able to base our valuation on degree of difficulty, doing this a merger of this stature in COVID times would be pretty incredible. One of the things, yes, our purpose is people, and that goes both internally and externally. One of the things that we said to our people early on in COVID times is we're protecting everyone's job. And our CEO, Aron Ain, put that out there at the very beginning of this. And ferociously, we protected people's jobs over the last year, especially when there was COVID, and then there's the natural trepidation thinking, wow, we're putting two companies together, who's going to be made redundant? So in fact, we'll be adding jobs to the company. And so it really manifested, our purpose as people really manifested itself both internally as well as externally.
Thank you, Neil. And of course, both of you relocated from the USA to reside here in Australia. And of course, Charlie, your focus is Australia and Southeast Asia. Of course, amid COVID, trying to grow Southeast Asia at the same time as Australia, when probably you would have been going to and fro, but you've had to do it from a distance. What have been the biggest challenges there?
Well, certainly, I think you hit the nail on the head. The biggest challenge is our inability to get there physically and work with the teams on the ground there. I mean, that being said, the folks that are in Hong Kong and in Singapore are working incredibly diligently, still delivering value, still doing well. But we do wish as a leadership team we could get up there more and work with them.
Of course, the online meeting has really come of age, and so we now have the capacity to cultivate that rapport that comes from frequent meetings online. So perhaps in some respects, we're able to bridge that gap through amid COVID until we can actually be physically present on the ground. Would you say?
We saw a tremendous productivity surge because things could be executed in a a remote way and in a 2D format. But I was just writing to the team today. There's no substitute for 3D high def, real life interaction with others. I recently, both Neil and I have been out and about with customers and with the UKG team here in Australia for the last few weeks. And it's nothing like a 3D smile.
Absolutely. Now, you do have some wonderful catchphrases. Another one is trust, transparency, and relationships. And you've got some leadership summits coming up. The APAC, how do you say it? Latin America?
Yes.
Yeah.
Latin America, yes, Nina.
So tell us about these summits that are coming up.
Right. So about 5 years ago, when we had our first leadership summit, so imagine getting teams together, people from India, from China, from Australia, and from Mexico and Latin America. A leadership team across a diverse set of cultures, a diverse set of countries, and trying to put the team together to appropriately act as one, but really thoughtfully not to come off as a U.S. company that's telling people in other countries on how to do their job. So we hired Dr. Yossi Feinberg, who is the Dean of the Graduate School of Business at the Stanford University Business School, to facilitate one of our leadership summits. And one of the simple things that he instilled upon us was this whole concept of trust, transparency, and relationships. And what we find, and Charlie and I talk about this, probably anecdotally on a weekly basis, is whether it's a partner we're working with, whether it's an employee that we're interviewing, someone we're grooming internally, executive sponsorship meetings that we have with clients, that those are the three legs of the stool that really resonate across cultures and resonate across countries and resonate internally and externally. And they've evolved to be the touchstone for all of us as part of the culture of our region.
And of course, Kronos and UKG seem to have their own language. You refer to multipliers. Can you describe what a multiplier is, please?
Right. So there's a famous book written by Liz Wiseman, which is just simply called Multipliers, and it's a leadership book. And I highly recommend it to anyone who's in a leadership position. I've heard a number of your speeches that I've seen on YouTube and channels online. And you talk about some very similar concepts, right? About building up people who can attract and optimize talent, not people who are minimizing talent, people who are liberating talent, team members, as you call them, not employees, to challenge people and extend, to create debate, and then from the debate have decisions, and then instill ownership and accountability are really some of the concepts that go with it. At its simplistic term, what we've learned through science, through Dr. Wiseman's writings, is if you could be a leader as a multiplier, you'll probably get about 5 times the productivity out of your team members versus if you're a diminisher, which is also known as someone like a micromanager, when people will just do the task they're given, nothing more, nothing less, and that's it. And so these are some of the things that we picked up through academia and through reading, working with people like yourself and others, that's helped really shape our culture that we have in our company and our regions.
And of course, what I'm hearing you say, Neil, is that multipliers will actually foster individuals to put in discretionary effort. Whereas if you have these micromanagers that diminish people's own feeling of contribution or self-worth, or don't get acknowledged, if ideas are stolen and posed as the manager's idea, that all inhibits people from bringing their best self to work. So it seems to me that what I've seen in action is that Kronos and now UKG managers there are taught to be conscious of how they speak, the behaviours they participate in by engaging their people. So this whole multiplier effect sounds very very fruitful. And Charlie, you were going to talk a little bit about team Avengers and cross-functional camaraderie. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about that, please.
I was in a sales call with my sales director probably about a year ago, and we were exiting, and he says, it's like selling the team Avengers. Everybody has a superpower, and everybody has everybody else's back, and everybody goes the extra mile to just come together. and do what's right for the customer. And so we've sort of adopted that as a motto, as a team Avengers. It's time for the Avengers. You know, when the going gets tough, the Avengers show up. It's become a mantra. We even did a little internal video on that, had some laughs with that. I guess the other thing I would say there, a little bit coming back to our purpose as people, is we have another internal motto here, and that is take care of the customers, take care of each other, and everything else will take care of itself. And those have been words to live by. Really helps us make tough business decisions, the big ones. Doing what's right for the customer, doing what's right for the people. I think everyone appreciates that.
That's the feeling I've picked up when I've been working with Kronos before the merger, is that the one comment about your former CEO was that he was kind. You know, you have human empathy, you demonstrate care, and it becomes part of the culture. And it's not this, you know, we're just here to do a job approach. It's like, well, we're humans. And for us to get the best of each of ourselves and each other, we do have to demonstrate care. And I love the fact that you've got a catchphrase. I mean, the best teams have some sort of slogan or some sort of nickname that people can get behind. So how widespread is Team Avengers? Is it just one particular team, or does every team create its own name, or how does that work?
It's really the entire region, and you know, great examples, sales ops and services and support and marketing and pre-sales. Everybody comes together to do what's right for the customer. It's absolutely amazing, and I think you know, folks that have been in the region for a long tenure maybe don't appreciate how good they are. And I feel part of my job is to let them know you're world class, best in the world here. So keep doing what you're doing, and we're all going to be fine.
Not only that, the company is world class. So the people are world class, the company's world class, everybody's happy. In fact, your global CEO, Aron Ain, wrote a wonderful book, Work Inspired, and there are a number of concepts in there that I think are worth discussing. One is courage to lead. Neil, do you want to talk about that? And
Sure.
Management Effectiveness Index?
Yeah, for sure. And those kind of go part and parcel with each other. And, you know, just the fact that our CEO, Aron, wrote this book, and the title of the book, what it is very telling in its own right. And so to support that, you know, beyond the book is really the philosophies that we have. And so Courage to Lead came out 6 or 7 years ago, which was this global initiative that we had, which really rewarded people for transcending their positions. Charlie spoke about the Team Avengers and the transcendence that happens in this region here. What we're really looking to do is, as we're evolving, this is even pre-merger, and this certainly carries forward, is recognizing and rewarding people who, as I said, transcended their job, their department, who contributed to kind of the greater good of the company. Along those lines, from a metric standpoint, you know, everyone speaks about employee engagement, and I know from listening to some of your stuff, Nina, that it's really about employee experience, which is transcendent of employee engagement, which is part of a culture. Is we came up with a set of metrics within our annual survey that also gives very specific and pointed feedback and asks very specific questions about the division that you're in and your direct manager. And so in addition to the kind of the macro level numbers that one would expect from a survey, it also gives very specific answers or very specific feedback in a couple of very specific areas about the immediate supervisor. But then it's up to people like Charlie and I, who work with our HR business partner, to sit down and provide the appropriate counseling and coaching as required.
But oftentimes they leave because of their manager. So we all very deeply care about this management effectiveness index and really strive to be the best managers that we can be.
Now, I believe there are some specific behaviours that that are measured as part of that index, because I can remember one manager when we were talking about productivity and time management saying, my role is to make sure I include time for one-on-one discussions, check-ins with my people. So do you have sort of metrics around that, like a minimum that a manager really needs to achieve, not just in a robotic way, but just as a guide of what's best practice?
We don't have metrics per se about numbers of meetings a week
Yeah.
with individual employees, but we do. One of the very specific questions in the Management Effectiveness Index is, have you had a career development discussion with your manager in the last 6 months? So, it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we do that. Things get so busy. Sometimes you can forget to do those kinds of things or put it off, but it's a priority here. I think the communications is not maybe as formal, but more informal, but definitely happens on a regular basis. At least with all my direct reports, I'm talking with them all the time.
And of course, it's almost like a checklist, because if people know what's expected of them, then they'll make sure they incorporate it into their week and their month. And that's how you maintain the engagement and, being listed as a best place to work on these global lists. So, so you're definitely doing something right. Now, Aaron in his book also talks about MyTime. Can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Sure. So when I was at corporate, we rolled this out in the US, and the idea was that, and Aaron talks about this in his book, it's all based on trust. But you can take as much time as you want. You just need to figure out how to get your job done and work with your manager. But if you need to go to India for 2 weeks to go visit family, or you want to take a mini sabbatical, that's all on the up and up. That's all okay. You want to take a particular Friday off because you've just been working super hard for a long period of time. As long as you just validate it with your manager, it's fine. There is no limit to the amount of time that you can take off. Now, in trying to roll this out to the regions, we have found that there are very many different kinds of governmental regulations on how you can do that. So we've been a little slower to roll that out in Australia, but we are looking at that very actively right now and hope to have a program in place in the coming months.
And Nina, we actually have to have the opposite discussion with people to encourage them to take time off, right? Especially in COVID times where, we're all linked on video, and obviously we're very fortunate here in Australia with the health of the nation as a whole, which certainly is not the case around the world. But we've certainly had to, remind people, take the day off, take a week off, and people appreciate it. It's the exact opposite conversation that you typically expect to have with someone, which is really encouraging them to take some time off.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's come out of this whole COVID experience last year is that, if anything, people did more than they probably would if they were working in the office. Everybody pitched in. They call it surge capacity. It's like there was a common goal, and we all had to make sure that we got the job done, even though we were working separate from each other. And so, yes, we do actually have to be mindful of, hey, you do have to stop. You do have to take time out for yourself.
Nina, you mentioned before we have to have a phrase. So one of the phrases we had in the probably July, August, September timeframe was, we might be far apart, but we're closer than ever. And that really rang true. You spoke before about the MEI and about having regular meetings with people. But what we found is that people were communicating heaps more on video and doing things even remotely, socially more than they were when they were working in the office together. Because the ability to do this organically was kind of taken away. The physical 3D, as Charlie called it.
And of course, it's not just Australia. You're managing Latin America and Southeast Asia. So in India, what are the specific challenges of those particular other areas other than the USA and Australia?
Yeah, so it goes back to what we discussed before when we had the folks from Stanford come in. We took appropriately the time to build relationships and have trust and transparency with people from multiple trips, business trips over the years. And so those relationships and that trust is rock solid. And, we just had to make sure that we can't go to India for a week and go on 15 to 20 sales calls, but really make sure we spend the time to do video calls not just with direct reports, but different as a region as a whole and at the individual level, and handle it that way. I think what we've been able to do is have more frequent communications versus just the quarterly trip to a certain geography, but to really get to spend more time with people on a more natural, organic basis, even though it's remote. Now, with all that said, we can't wait to get back on planes and see people face to face. We can't wait to get back on planes and go enjoy these wonderful cultures and cuisines of all the countries that we cover. But like everyone else, we're doing the best that we can with remote outside of Australia.
Yeah, this whole COVID thing has been a reset with some definite silver lining, apart from the health and the health and the illness side of things. Just from a operating business, it's given us an opportunity to question how we did things in the past, and maybe will some of the things that we've done just as a matter of emergency will actually stay put. Can you think of some of these silver lining behaviors that you'll probably keep doing?
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
So there are a number of them, but I think one of the things we came to realize, and also our customers came to realize, was we don't necessarily always have to be on site to do a remote configuration. So there was a tremendous productivity explosion, I think, particularly in the early days of COVID. We've seen that. I think also, and I've talked to a number of customers about their positions about going back to work post-COVID. I don't think anybody believes we're going to get back to exactly the way it was before. I think people are a lot more amenable to the work from home, to the flexible lifestyle. Coming back to Aron's idea of trust, as long as you get your work done, do it in your time. Do it in a way that balances your work and your life. I definitely think that is something that we're going to see it, as well as virtually every other organization I've talked to in Australia.
And I do believe there's 5 strategic pillars, and one of the pillars is listening to our teams. So is that the most important of the 5 pillars, do you think?
It's hard to, it's like saying which of your kids is your favorite, but they're all important. So 3 of the pillars have to do with the business and sort of more mechanics of the business, and the other 2 are customer first and better together, or listening to people. I firmly believe if you take care of your customers and you take care of each other, that we'll be fine. And so we put a specific focus on this. Our HR director of HR sits on the leadership team, is there kind of to counterbalance some of the more financial and operational sides of the business, but we always have that at the forefront of our mind. And the key for me anyway is listening, communication, and time. You've got to spend time with people. You've got to hear them out. You've got to hear not just what they're saying, but what they mean to say. What's their latent commentary?
That's good. And to ask clarifying questions and not to jump to a conclusion. And it's interesting, we can all learn by reflection, because sometimes I will have automatically jumped to a conclusion. Then with a bit of reflection, I think, oh, maybe I should ask some clarifying questions. And I kind of have to quietly reset my own brain in terms of, oh, well, I did form an opinion rather hastily there. So, but that's all part of growing in emotional intelligence, is our ability to reflect on what we do and say and then adjust as required.
I gotta say personally, one of the hardest things for me was to be comfortable with silence. So when we're having a conversation, allow the other person to reflect and really put together what they're thinking, and don't necessarily jump in and lead the witness. Just listen carefully.
That's a very good point, because my understanding of thinking styles is that some people have to kind of say it in their head silently before they open their mouth. And I'm a bit of a quick thinker and a quick talker. And I've learnt that, I think they're just kind of reflecting what they are going to say. So just sit back and let them speak. Don't rush in. Be okay with silence. That's a very good lesson for all of us. Now, how is it that you, Neil, the CEO, Aron Ain, I don't know about you, Charlie, do you write blog articles as well?
Not too much.
But how is it that senior leaders in the organization find time to write?
Well, it's part of the new normal, right? I mean, as things evolve, it's it just has evolved to be part of what we do. You know, just like video has evolved to be part of what we do with people these days. And, you know, as social media took hold a number of years ago, both at the personal level as well as things like LinkedIn, I think there's a level of expectation that in addition to traditional corporate ways of communication, you know, there's an element of communication that happens on social media channels.
And so do you find that your staff really appreciate reading your blog articles and derive, inspiration from it?
So internally, I don't write articles. I do blog videos or vlogs.
Oh, I see. Right.
So
Right.
again, in COVID times, trying to reach out and touch people more and have more of that intimate kind of a communication style. I've taken over the last 6 months or so into doing vlogs on almost a monthly basis. That can cover a multitude of topics at typically 2 minutes or less. Kind of get to the high points, try to have some fun with it, instill some fun with it, and stay in touch with people through video, which is a different level of internal communication. I've even taken to doing some of them externally as well, which are typically fairly well received, and they're also differentiated from just the 1,000 emails that these executives get from a multitude of sources.
Now, of course, you had to start somewhere, and did you find that your ability to do these 2-minute, 3-minute videos evolved over time, and now it's just incorporated as part of your monthly duties?
You know, it's one of the wonderful people that we work with, who's one of our team members, who happens to be in the US. She's responsible for enablement. And she said, she's been kind of a leader in terms of using video communications. Our CEO puts out, he calls it Aron at Work. He uses video as a medium on a very regular basis. But we really worked it down that people really will pay attention to a good solid 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And it also forces one to really get to the point and really think through what they want to say and kind of make it fun, make it topical, and have kind of a call to action where it's appropriate.
Well, you're right. As Mark Twain said, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter.
Exactly.
So it's about being crisp and clear and getting to the point. But now, in a recent blog article, you talked about trends in 2021. People before profits, businesses adopt a greater purpose. And one of the earlier blog episodes with Michael McQueen talks about, if you go for purpose, profitability will look after itself. So is that along the same lines?
All right. So on that point, Nina, right? So we did you asked me about our leadership summits before. So the one that we did in August, we hired Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, who's a behavioral psychologist. And we really in COVID times kind of unpacked Maslow's hierarchy of needs to some degree and realized, the various pieces of that and where people around the world might be in that hierarchy of needs, which is very relevant. In certain countries, it was more food and shelter. Here in Australia, we're certainly more, in some other parts of that. And so what we tried to do was further the work of Maslow to the next level and really helping people not just self-actualize, but transcend. And by doing that and think about this, in previous times, we would have dedicated these leadership summits to the nuts and bolts of our business and very specific business things, market trends, strategies that we would employ. And this past August, when we did it, we dedicated it completely to people and how we could help people transcend and achieve their personal goals and objectives. Because we also know with the hierarchy of needs is that as the lower items are satisfied, they tend to regress. And even in the tough times that we've had here and around the world, and again, some of my markets are in much worse shape than Australia is relative to COVID. And so what we found is our results have been stellar and record results. And really, we put our focus into people, not just the nuts and bolts of how we run our businesses.
Yeah, it seems to me that UKG is a company that looks after both heart and soul as well as results. And that's what makes it such a wonderful place to work. I think your staff retention is probably pretty high. Would that be right, Charlie?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very high. Our employee engagement scores are in the high 80s. Staff retention is very good. And one of the things we are looking to do as an expansion is to start bringing younger talent into the business. It seems there's a dearth of workforce management expertise in Australia. So we are deciding to start a co-op program or an internship program and start bringing young talent in and exposing people early in their careers to what we can have to offer. Hopefully we can capture some of those folks, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but and grow the business that way.
Yeah, well, what you do capture them because you've got to win people's hearts and minds if you want them to go the extra mile and put in that extra effort. So, and it seems to me that anybody listening to this podcast today, take heed of the lessons that UKG is sharing with us today. The other trend the blog described was life-work synergy. Work and the workplace will be more centered around employees' lives. Is that something specific or a path that you're specifically following?
Absolutely. I think that really started back at corporate years ago with the MyTime initiative and just this recognition that it's not work, 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 work. I think Aron says used to say, if Kronos is the most important thing in your life, then you need to rearrange your life and give hugs to your friends and your family. So it started then and really fairly relaxed when people came and went and the time they took off. But COVID really took that to a new level where you had to balance work-life synergy. You might be on a conference call and there's somebody at your door or your dog's barking, or there was a little bit more of that. And I think there's more acceptance by others because they were in the same boat that you were in. And as I said before, I think we will never get back to the 5-day a week in the office situation. We are right now, we opened our offices about a month ago or 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And we are encouraging people to come back and meet with each other. But it'll never be sort of a mandate. We're going to take this slowly and work with our folks so that they maintain that work-life balance.
And the third trend is that HR will have to reinvent itself and there'll be a bit of a rebirth in HR. So can you name any particular changes that reflects?
Sure. I think COVID has caused us to not just us, but particularly the marketplace and the customers we deal with, to look at their people a little bit differently. In the past, organizations might take their people for granted. They're the most flexible resource. They can give and take. And they maybe didn't appreciate people as much as they should have. With COVID, I think there was a much more of a focus on people and thinking about, wow, these are the folks that I work with every day that are delivering our mission statement to our customers. We need to really think about how to make their lives better. And with COVID, there's been this focus on people.
Going way back, David Meister wrote the book Trusted Advisor. And it seems to me that particular concept has got legs. And I understand that your HR people now perceive themselves as trusted advisors instead of for want of a better term, tick and flick, just looking after the dollars and cents and payroll and making sure that they have a certain number of things that they have to be compliant. So what is the difference if HR now has this trusted advisor theme in how it operates?
Well, I think it goes back to Aron's book, Work Inspired, right? Which at its most simplistic, happy employees make happy customers. And, fully embracing HR and, tick and flick, I think I'm going to steal that from you, Nina, if that's okay. Just let me know the royalty payments I need to make every time I use it. But no, as Charlie mentioned, our HR director here is part of the leadership team. And, we don't just engage with this person when it's time to do annual reviews and pay increments. It's part of Great Place to Work. It's part of the stuff that we do in the communities. It's parts of the things that we do to enrich our team members' lives, both within work and outside of work. And so the position is a much more holistic position, and it's also much more inclusive of different things other than the typical administrivia that one would find historically associated with the position.
And of course, have you noticed any of your major clients, almost by osmosis, changing how they operate because they've just seen how effective it is when they've been interacting with your team members, with your colleagues?
Well, absolutely. I think HR has transcended, to use Neil's phrase, from being more of an administrative tick and flip type of a situation to being truly strategic. How are we going to, every company's dream is to have companies that give you that, employees and team members that give you that discretionary effort, that go the extra mile to get the results that the customers are looking for. Well, one twist on that's been interesting for us as we advise our customers is the need to be a little more of a truth teller and be more direct. So we've seen thousands of implementations. We've seen thousands of these situations in the past. As the phrase we use is, we've seen the movie, we know how it ends. And sometimes customers want to repave cow paths and do things the way that they've always done things. We have to have the courage to tell them, you might want to consider these other ways. If you go down that path, this is how it's likely to end. Not always the most comfortable conversation to have, but our teams have found that it's the right way to do business.
So just in closing, I'm just wondering what book you've read recently, or what's the next book you intend to read that you think is going to inspire you? Perhaps starting with you, Neil?
Well, I can't name it because I read an unpublished manuscript of a book that's to be published by an author this past weekend. And it has to do, at a high level, it has to do with looking at how the new normal is going to be as we kind of exit, hopefully sooner versus later, the COVID world. And so that's what I read most recently as of this weekend, was a fairly good manuscript for that kind of book.
And why you can't tell us by the sounds of things? It's top secret.
Well, I'm not the author, and I'm certainly not going to disclose this author's work. That's up to the author to decide how, when, and where to do it. But it's someone that I have great admiration for. It's someone that I've known for quite some time, and it's a nice piece of work. It's topical. It marries a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about today and other mega trends that are out there, in terms of what we're all trying to figure out is, what is the new normal going to be? We spoke around that a bunch in this conversation, and none of us have a crystal ball. But this is a pretty good work at that. It's the first one that I've really seen. I've seen other efforts at it, but this is a really nice piece of work in that regard.
Well, that's exciting. And Neil, as soon as it's available to tell us what that book is, I'll put it in the show notes. So let me know.
You got a deal. I'll check with the author and let you know.
And Charlie, what's the book that you either read recently or will be reading that you think will inspire you?
Well, I have two books. One's more of a personal nature. It's The Brothers Karamazov. It was my mother's favorite book, and I want to read that so I can have a good long discussion with her about The Brothers Karamazov. But the other book, probably more relevant to this conversation, is Barack Obama's book. I've heard wonderful things about it. There was a phrase that my partner was reading to me the other day, something to the effect of, enthusiasm makes up for a lot of deficiencies. And those are words to live by. I'm always enamored by people that are enthusiastic, that hustle, that just work really hard. And I'm looking forward to reading that book.
And this is the thing, if people bring enthusiasm to work, it's contagious. And the trouble is if people bring moodiness or negativity to work, it's actually more contagious than positivity. So we really have to encourage enthusiasm and positivity. But it seems to me that that's exactly what is exudes through UKG and Kronos. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been a real pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina, very much. Pleasure.
Well, thanks everybody for sharing this half hour or so with Neil Solomon and Charlie Dewitt from UKG, from the recent merger of Kronos with Ultimate. Please subscribe, give us a rating, give us a comment, and we look forward to the next episode of Manage Self-Lead Others.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.